In the 5th century before Christ, a Greek poet took a wooden statue of a god, chopped it into pieces, and used the sacred wood to cook his lentils. It wasn't an accident, it was a statement. His name was Diagoras, and he wanted to prove one thing, that the statue was just wood, that nothing would happen, that the gods, if they existed, would do nothing about it, and nothing happened. The lentils cooked. Now, I know how that sounds, but that story opens one of the most misunderstood questions in the history of ideas. Who were the first atheists? Who was the first person to look up at the sky and say, in plain words, there's nobody there? And let me be straight with you, because this channel isn't about confirming what you already think. The answer is far stranger than some guy in Greece, because the question, who was the first atheist, hides a trap, and once you see it, the whole story changes shape. Before I show you that, if you enjoy history told from the sources, drop a like and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and helps the channel. Done? Then let's go. The real question is atheism a modern invention, a product of science and the Enlightenment? Or were people denying the gods thousands of years ago, long before Darwin, at the heart of the most religious civilizations that ever existed? And I'll tell you up front, somewhere in the middle of this video, I'll show you that the word atheist itself was born as an insult. And at first, it was used against the people you'd least expect, including Christians. Stick around, because that detail reorganizes everything. Let's go. And it starts with a problem that sounds silly, but ruins the entire question. What exactly is an atheist? Everyone knows what an atheist is, someone who doesn't believe in God. But this is where almost everyone slips. When we say God today, we're almost always thinking of a very specific deity, a single, all-powerful creator who exists outside the universe and cares what you do. That's the God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For most of human history, people didn't believe in that kind of God. They believed in many gods. Of thunder, the sea, war, love. Gods who fought each other, got jealous, sometimes lost. Gods who were part of the world, not above it. So here's the first trap. When you ask, who was the first atheist? You have to ask, atheist in relation to what? Denying the single Christian God is one thing. Denying the entire Greek pantheon is another. And denying that the gods care about you, while admitting they exist, is a third thing entirely. Stop and think about that. Atheist is a modern tool. And when you force it onto the ancient world, it grinds. People back then didn't think in terms of I believe or I don't believe in God. They thought in terms of taking part in the rituals or not, honoring or dishonoring the gods of the city, being pious or impious. So the story of the first atheists isn't about people who discovered God doesn't exist. It's richer. People who, inside worlds saturated with religion, began pulling at the first loose threads. And those threads appeared in 2 places on the planet at almost the same time, with no contact between them. Let's take both. Let's start with Greece, because that's where our word comes from, and the word story is revealing. Atheist comes from the Greek atheos. And here's the first shock. At first, it wasn't a philosophical position. It was an insult. It combines without, and theos, God, literally without a god. But the original sense wasn't someone who doesn't believe. It was closer to abandoned by the gods, cursed, the kind of thing you'd shout at someone you despised. Hold on to that, because the evolution of this word is the key to the video. It was only in the 5th century before Christ, the golden age of Athens, that atheos took on a second meaning, closer to ours, one who denies the gods. And that's no coincidence, because it was one of the most intense intellectual explosions in history. The age of the first philosophers and scientists, the first people who tried to explain the world without the gods. Take Anaxagoras. He looked at the sun, which for the Greeks was a god, and said it wasn't a god at all. It was a giant incandescent stone, a rock on fire. He was charged with impiety for it. Then comes our friend with the lentils, Diagoras of Melos, whom ancient sources call the first real atheist. He didn't just deny deny the gods. He mocked them, publicly revealing the secret rites of the Eleusinian mysteries, as if to say, it's all theater. Athens sentenced him to death. He fled. And a third, the most sophisticated, Diagoras, who opened a book with a line that sounds astonishingly modern. I quote, "Concerning the gods, I have no way of knowing whether they exist or do not exist." That's essentially agnosticism 2,400 years ago. His books were publicly burned, and he was banished. Notice the pattern? Diagoras, death sentence. Protagoras, banished, books burned. Anaxagoras, charged with impiety. And the most famous of all, Socrates, executed partly for not recognizing the gods of the city. That tells you something crucial the atheism is modern crowd ignores. If Athens needed to condemn and execute these people, the ideas existed. You don't persecute a position nobody holds. The harshness of the repression is proof there was something to repress. But before the verdict on Greece, we need a trip. Because while this happened in the Mediterranean, on the other side of the world, something even more radical was being built. And almost no one in the West knows it. In ancient India, around the same time as Diagoras, a school of thought emerged called Charvaka, also known as Lokayata, meaning roughly oriented toward this world. And here it gets impressive. Because while the Greeks had brave but isolated individual atheists, India produced an entire philosophical school, systematic, organized, dedicated to materialism and the denial of the supernatural. The Charvakas taught that only this world exists. No heaven, no hell, no soul, no afterlife, no gods supervising anything. The human being is made only of matter, and when the body dies, everything ends. Earth returns to earth, and consciousness simply ceases. And look at the rigor. They argued the only reliable knowledge is direct perception, what you can see, touch, measure. And they rejected the argument from authority, the idea that something is true just because a sacred text or a priest said so. That's empirical skepticism, centuries before Christ, and they didn't spare the religion of their time. The Charvakas accused the priests of inventing rituals, sacrifices, and promises of another world as a way of making a living off other people's faith. A line attributed to the tradition sums it up. While life is yours, live joyfully, because no one escapes death, and once the body is ashes, it never returns. There's even an earlier figure, Ajita Kesakambali, 6th century before Christ, a contemporary of the Buddha, who taught that the wise and the fool dissolve equally into nothing at death. This is recorded in the Buddhist scriptures themselves, which quoted him in order to disagree. Stop. Think about the scale. While one part of humanity built ever larger temples, another part, across the planet, was already saying plainly that when you die, it's over, and that the priests might be lying. And here's an almost painful irony. We barely have the Charvakas' original texts. Almost everything survived through their enemies, rival schools who quoted them in order to refute them. The voice of the first great materialists in history reached us filtered through the mouths of those who despised them. So, with Greece and India on the table, we can finally face the real question, and the answer demands honesty. It's tempting to take Diagoras, Protagoras, the Charvakas, and say, there they are, the Richard Dawkins of antiquity. But that's the trap I warned about, because there's a serious evidence problem. Remember Diagoras? Most of what we know comes from sources written centuries after his death, and the scholars sharply disagree. One major specialist, Marek Winiarczyk, argued he probably wasn't an atheist in the modern sense, that his reputation may have been partly a later legend. Another, Tim Whitmarsh, argues he really did reject the gods on the basis of the problem of suffering. Not even about the most famous first atheist can the specialists agree. And there's a deeper conceptual problem. Many of these thinkers weren't atheists in our sense. Several didn't deny the gods existed. They denied the gods cared or intervened or deserved the rituals. The line between atheist, skeptic, agnostic, and critic of religion was far blurrier than we imagine. And now, the detail I promised. Remember, atheos began as an insult? A few centuries after Diagoras, a new group appeared in the Roman Empire, a group that refused to worship the traditional gods, called the old gods false, and skipped the public sacrifices. The Romans had a name for this dangerous, impious group. They They called them atheoi, atheists. That group was the Christians. Stop. Absorb that. In the eyes of Rome, the first persecuted atheists weren't materialists who denied all divinity. They were Christians who believed fervently in God, just the wrong God from Rome's view. Because to a Roman, atheist didn't mean someone who believes in no God. It meant someone who doesn't believe in our gods. It was an accusation of disloyalty, not a philosophical description. See why the question is a trap? The word changed meaning so many times that asking who was the first atheist is almost like asking who first used a word that back then meant something else. So, after all this, what's left? Something more interesting than a simple answer. If you want a plaque reading "the first atheist in history," the honest answer is there is no such plaque, and anyone selling you one is oversimplifying. The sources are fragmentary, the concept slippery, the word itself a moving target for 2,000 years. But step back, and a truth more powerful than any single name appears. Doubt about the gods is not a modern invention. It wasn't born with science, or the Enlightenment, or Darwin. It's ancient, very likely as ancient as belief itself. In Athens, someone chopped up a god statue to cook dinner. In India, whole schools taught that death is the end and the priests invented the rest. And the fact that these ideas were banished, burned, and executed doesn't prove they were rare. It proves the opposite, that they were a real, living threat, one that power needed to crush. Remember the trap I mentioned at the start? It's thinking disbelief is an endpoint, a recent discovery, the result of progress. It isn't. Disbelief is a starting point. It was always here, walking alongside faith. Every time a human being raised a temple, another human being, somewhere, looked at it and doubted. And maybe that's what's most human about this whole story. Not faith alone, and not doubt alone, but the two, always together, always in tension. Since the first time, someone looked up at the sky and wondered whether anyone was looking back. The first atheist has no name, because the first atheist was probably as ancient as the first believer, and the two, in all likelihood, looked up at the same sky on the same day. If you made it this far, drop a like. It genuinely helps the channel keep making deep dives like this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.